been a brutal March for the Buckeyes in the Big Ten on the hard court. And it's basketball season when Michigan holds the hopes of the conference. Welcome to Ohio State Buckeyes Live. We talk nothing but football here every Wednesday at 2 o'clock Eastern time. From the top off in the distance, he has vanished for the time being, but we will await the return of Steve Helwagen from Bucknuts 247 Sports, Kevin Noon there in the middle from Buckeye Grove on Rivals, and of course, Tony Gerdeman from Buckeye Scoop. We hope everyone out there appreciates the expertise and the knowledge that these guys bring each and every week. How are we doing today?
Doing great.
Well. Good. So the Buckeyes in spring practice here for a second week. You guys were able to hear from Ryan Day on Monday and then the running backs on Tuesday. Tony, we'll start with you in regards to your thoughts about what Ryan Day had to say on Monday. Anything meaningful there?
Well, Mark, it's still early. It's very early, and any type of conclusions you're trying to draw, we're just 2 practices in, and it's entirely too early to draw any conclusions. But what I asked him about is if the bullet was still a thing, and so yes, that is still a thing, and it looks like Craig Young is there. So it's interesting trying to get information from Ryan Day, especially this early. I think it was Cleveland.com had the gall to ask for like an entire 2 deep, basically. Like, hey Ryan, can you just run through the 2 deep? And there's, sure, shoot for the moon, see what you can get. And of course, that's where it's, well, we're just rolling everybody through, and we don't know who's who. And it's almost like this is the first time he's ever seen any of these guys, and so they're just learning all about these guys. But it's good that. Like, I think in the past, maybe we've gotten like the quarterbacks on the first day of spring, and it's like, what have you seen from the quarterbacks? Well, it's way too early. So fortunately, we'll at least that'll be later on during the spring when we finally talk about the quarterbacks and talk to them, and they'll have more information for us. But yeah, right now it's entirely too early to even know if this team is going to be any good, Mark.
Yeah, I don't think we have any idea on that. They're a bit of a wild card, bit of a mystery there, certainly in the Big Ten. Kevin, your thoughts about Ryan Day? Were you able to read between the lines at all?
No, not really. I mean, how dare you ask about 2 deeps, injuries, or anything at this point? It just was a spirited constitutional out there, and they put on the pads here on Wednesday, which we've not spoken to them since that's happened. But yeah, we don't really have any particulars, but I don't think that's a Ryan Day thing. I mean, even as blunt as Urban was, I mean, he didn't really offer up much when they were just running around in shorts and shells. And even, with Jim Tressel, I mean, forget about it. We weren't really getting much of anything in that instance either. So, yeah, it's 112 guys out there, which is just a lot, especially when you figure out that they don't have the entire recruiting class in at this point. There's still going to be a good number of guys that are going to be summer enrollees or whatever. But, I think we got some of the particulars on, running multiple fields, things that Steve had mentioned last week and whatnot, and how they were going to try and just get guys a lot of reps, and that they weren't as, at least in terms of what they were telling us, as worried right now about who's a 2 and who's a 3 or whatever. It's just about getting guys work and whatnot. And, hopefully by the time we talk to Ryan Day here on Monday of this next week, he'll share a little bit more, but I'm not exactly counting on it.
Yeah, I'll just follow along. Again, just bits and pieces here and there and little drips and drabs. And we did get to talk to Tony Alford, the running backs coach, and several of the running backs who are competing for the job, including the 2 freshmen, Trayvon Henderson, Evan Pryor. They were very impressive when we got a chance to talk to them. I know Cheryl asked in here about the injury to Harry Miller, and really there's no details about it other than doesn't sound like he's going to be available for spring practice, just working out on the side, rehabbing, whatever kind of. You would speculate maybe he had some type of a cleanup surgery after the bowl game, the last bowl game, and is just because of that, just kind of sidelined right now and rehabbing, and really won't affect his status per se for the fall. He's got the 1 year as a starter under his belt, so they liked him enough that he started this past season, and we'll see in fall camp if he's able to hold on to that job, or if somebody else who's going to get a ton of reps this spring will be able to unseat him there at one of the guard positions. And it sounds like Matthew Jones is working at center right now as well. And, along with Luke Whippler, and they'll sort that out the best they can.
Steve, let's keep it right there with you concerning the running backs after talking to Ryan Day on Monday, running backs on Tuesday, and certainly based on everything you guys gave me on Ryan Day, I've got like 4 or 5 pages of notes right here. So anyway, the running back position, just in regards to, you mentioned the 2 much anticipated, awaited guys that are now on campus versus the rest of the group that's filled up the previous rosters led by Master Teague. So what did you get out of these running backs and get a feel from the new guys in particular?
It sounds like Tony Alford is going with Master Teague, as the starter right now, and the other guys are going to have to unseat him. And, playing time, he's not going to get it by default in the fall. He's got the best. Figure the best players are going to play. But they like what they're getting out of him right now as a leader, guy showing the other guys, the younger guys, the ropes. And certainly he has got the body of work as a runner. When he was healthy, second half of the season, he played pretty well. Of course, Trey Sermon filled in as well and did an outstanding job as the season rolled on, and he moved on to the professional ranks. But I think that right now it's Master Teague's job to lose. He does the pass protection, runs the football hard, and does all those little things that you want to see. I asked Tony Alford, how does he want to see Master Teague improve? And he says just with those making plays in space and the agility and these kind of things. And we saw in the bowl game he struggled catching the ball out of the backfield, which was a big part of what J.K. Dobbins was able to add to the offense, was as a pass catcher coming out of the backfield the year before. So I think that that's an area. And excuse me 1 second. Man, had a sneeze attack there. I think it's hard when you're on a train of thought that how are you going to handle that? But
there went all the thoughts.
Yeah. I think that he wants him to improve what he can do in the open field, make guys miss. He said they're excited by what the offensive line is able to do to create creases and also get to the second level and block the linebackers and the safeties. And if they're able to do that, it then falls back on the running back to make the one unblocked man miss and take it the distance. And we didn't see a lot of that last year, at least early in the season. Teague finally broke one against Indiana, which was a longer touchdown run, which was obviously something that they'd been hoping for. So to me, that kind of sums it up in a nutshell. I can't really sit here and break down the pluses and the minuses of a Steel Chambers versus a Marcus Crowley versus a Mayan Williams, other than we saw Mayan Williams kind of move to number 2 on the list last year, I guess would be 3 behind Sermon and Teague. But in the game Sermon missed, then he was number 2. In the game Teague missed, he was number 2. Williams did some nice things and ran the ball effectively. They call him meatball, or a bowling ball, however you want to look at it. Mayan Williams is a guy that is going to have to be reckoned with. Maybe in the short yardage situation on the goal line, he would be the guy to come in there and finish the drive or whatever, or convert that 3rd and 1. But you get beyond him and you have the 2 young guys, Trayvon Henderson, just a high ceiling with him. He's listed, he went from 195 as a high school prospect to 210, it sounds like. So he's put on some weight, didn't play last fall. Obviously, his state didn't have football, and neither did Pryor. So those 2 guys, they got their baptism today in terms of playing with full pads on, and I'm sure we'll get a report at some point on how that all shook out for them.
With you guys addressing the running back situation right now, let's get to a super chat that addresses that as well from Vinay. Vinay, appreciate that so much. Thoughts on the running back room, which Steve has started us on. Master's job to lose, or do we expect a split between the two-back approach or Trey and Evan, meaning, of course, Henderson and Pryor on the second and third downs? So we'll tee up with that, Tony.
It's definitely Master's job to lose, but as we saw last year, he's capable of losing the job. Trey Sermon eventually took it, and I think, yeah, there may have been some injuries there, but these other guys, all of these running backs can look back to last year and see that if they perform, the job will be theirs, or that it's capable of being theirs. And with the young guys, they're not even necessarily trying to start. They don't mind sharing. And you know, that's the case with, I think, everybody in the room. Master Teague said yesterday, yes, he wants to be the guy, but it's going to be really hard for one guy to get 20 carries in this offense because they've got guys who can play. And Alfred said, your works will determine what you get, or whatever, whatever that saying is, your works will determine your playing time, essentially. And if you earn it, you'll get it. With Marcus Crowley coming back, I think it was interesting to hear him talk about how Marcus Crowley talked about how he had to rehab basically at home last year for much of the time. So that hindered his development. That's why he didn't really get back till the Alabama game. And even then, Alfred shared that Marcus Crowley apologized to him at that point, and after that, during the Alabama game on the sideline, because he had been telling Alfred for weeks that he was ready. And he gets tackled in the Alabama game, and he goes to the sideline, and he apologized to Alfred because he said, you're right, I wasn't ready. And so he says he's back to his form where he's cutting better than he was last year, cutting better back to where he was as a freshman. And you look at all of these other guys, they can do things that Master Teague necessarily can't, which is make guys miss. And Teague can run by anybody and get into that second level if the hole is there. And all running backs are dependent on holes, and so Master Teague is no different in that. There's a role for him in this offense, and I would be shocked if he's not the starting running back at the outset, and I would not be shocked if he is not the starting running back at the end of the season, because there are a lot of different guys in this offense. I still don't know what Mayan Williams fully is. We were all impressed by what he did last year, but it was 10 carries. And I think we lose sight of that. Can he hit home runs, or is he just a 6 yards each time? 2 yards here, 8 yards there, 3 yards here, 9 yards there. Where Marcus Crowley, his freshman year, averaged 9 yards a carry. Steel Chambers last year averaged 9 yards a carry, but put the ball on the ground. So there's a lot of different ways to do this. And Vinay talking about the split backs, I mean, that's something we used to talk about with Mike Weber and J.K. Dobbins that never came to fruition. And, they practiced it each week and they had it in the offense, but it never showed up. So now I'm just going to start suggesting the diamond formation with 3 running backs and the quarterback in there as well.
Yeah, I mean, you got to ride the hot hand, and I think it's just going to be a matter of who the hot hand is. And getting back to the Marcus Crowley in the Alabama game, let's remember they lose Trey Sermon on the first series. They don't have Mayan Williams because of presumed COVID test, or at least contact tracing there, and he was left back in Columbus. So, they were pretty thin, and they were kind of thrust there, and he was thrust into playing time at that point, and it didn't necessarily go all that well. But I think people are ready to anoint the true freshmen as guys that are going to come in and step in and take that job. They're true freshmen. It's a big step up. And both of these guys, neither of them played a senior season of high school because of Virginia and North Carolina rules and not having seasons. So it's been a minute since either of them have played high school football. So I think a lot of it's going to come down with them on how quickly they can adapt and adjust. And as Tony had said, somebody like Steel Chambers, who had issues putting the ball on the ground, generally you see young players are the ones that are going to have some of those issues at first because, you're getting hit by grown men in college football. You're not getting hit by little Timmy from down the block or whatever. So it's it's a whole different world or whatnot. But, I'm going to keep an eye on somebody like Marcus Crowley. I mean, him saying that he's finally 100%, yeah, he doesn't have the biggest or deepest body of work in terms of what he's done in his career, but everything that we saw pre-injury looked pretty darn good. But I guess maybe I'll be the guy that defends Master Teague at this point and say that, I mean, they thought enough of him last season to anoint him the starter. And granted, Trey Sermon wasn't Trey Sermon at that point, but they certainly like something with Master Teague. And, I think that we're going to see some good things there, but it's just going to be a matter of him being able to finish off runs because, the slightest breeze goes near him and he goes down. And that's just, you see somebody who's yoked up the way he is, and you wouldn't expect, a finger on his ankle to bring him down. So that's something he certainly needs to work on.
It just seems as though, based on what we've seen at the current running back group, led by Master Teague, versus what we're hearing and what the recruiting rankings tell us about the two guys coming in, that we know that this team is decidedly better than everyone in the Big Ten, and they would have to have mass injuries. They would have to have a quarterback disaster, something, or just Penn State to rise up. They're probably the only legit candidate in the East to do so, to take down Ohio State from getting to a Big Ten championship game. Then in a one-game scenario, of course, anything could happen, but they're decidedly better than everybody in the Big Ten. But then to make that run during the playoffs, and they could certainly be, and I'm sure Ryan Day hopes that they're a different team in December than they are in September, that they can make it through a season in which they're decidedly better than everyone, reach their stride, have that quarterback really come into his own in games 9, 10, 11, and then they hit the runway there in the playoffs. But it almost feels like they need that extra dimension that's a J.K. Dobbins type in the playoff, with a guy that's probably going to arrive on campus, one of those two, versus what they currently have. I don't know if you guys see that.
I want to jump in quick just with a one-liner or so, and then I'll let the other guys jump in. What do you get out of being the big dog in the Big Ten? What have we seen in basketball? A whole lot of nothing. A whole lot of nothing at this point. So, yeah, you've got to be able to, winning the Big Ten is all well and good or whatnot, but we've seen that in multiple years and multiple sports, but you got to be able to get over that hurdle.
It's a wrestling league, right, Kevin?
Yes, absolutely. And it was a down year for Ohio State in that sport too. So I guess there's always synchronized swimming season.
Women's hockey and a couple in the Frozen Four.
Then they lost
the Big Ten here.
Steve, you're muted.
Steve, we can't hear you. You're muted.
Sorry, didn't realize. I understand where Kevin's coming from. You want to aspire to be more than just the Big Ten champion. I think there's so much more competition out there, whether it would be Alabama, Clemson, or maybe somebody else comes out of one of those leagues, Georgia, or Notre Dame rises up, or Oklahoma, whoever it may be. But there's a lot of competition out there, and he's right. You do need to definitely check that box along the way, but that's not the end point. That's not where you've arrived. And certainly last year, winning the semifinal game over Clemson, that was the first time they'd made it back to the championship game since they won it in 2014. So that was a nice hurdle that they were able to clear last year, and psychologically could give them an edge going into the upcoming season, that they know that they're good enough to play for a national championship in any one of these seasons. It's just, do you get the breaks? Do you get the injuries? Do you get the right bounce of the ball? As we saw in the Clemson game last year, do you get the right calls at the right times that impact the game? So, it just kind of depends. And Mark has a good point. I mean, Teague may be good enough to win you a Big Ten championship, certainly, but is he good enough to help you win the national championship? And I think that the jury is out on that. So, I think, and you could make that case probably at some other positions as well. That at least they have depth at running back. If they are hit by an injury, they will have one or more guys ready to go, take over that position, and should not be a whole lot of drop-off one way or the other. So I think, to me, this is an important spring. If my name was Steel Chambers or Crowley, Marcus Crowley, I would say that this is a very important spring for me, as I don't want to get passed up by an incoming freshman or by Mayan Williams. Now that those two guys are healthy, they need to deliver. They need to play up to their capability, or they risk falling really to the back of the line to the 5th or 6th spot and only playing in mop-up time. So mop-up time for the mop-up time when it's 63-6. So, I think that is, there's mop-up time middle of the 3rd, mop-up time early 4th, and then mop-up time late 4th when the stadium, there's only about 20,000 people left and it's 71-7. That's when, the last group gets in.
Like when they're playing Michigan and can cash in at the end of 2018, mop up time. Yeah.
Mop up and real mop up.
Urban had mercy on the maize and blue that year.
The stadium was still full at that point, though.
Yes,
exactly. A couple quick Mark, hitters here. Sure. Go ahead, Tony.
Well, I was just going to say, I think one of the big differences this year with the offense is there's depth at every spot. Last year, you lose Justin Fields, you're done. You lose Trey Sermon, you see what happens. You lose a Chris Olave, and things are tough. You lose Garrett Wilson, same thing. This year, if you lose a quarterback, it's not the drop-off that it would be. And you lose a running back, it's not the drop-off. You lose a receiver, it's not the drop-off. And they've got probably 8 or 9 offensive linemen, 10 offensive linemen that they can start. And so there is that I think puts them in a better position for a title run this year, just in terms of the injuries. Now, I'm not saying they're going to be as good as that last year. I'm saying they're probably more they're better equipped to handle somebody going down, and you don't have to hold your breath every time Justin Fields drops back or takes a hit like he did last year.
Yakov 22, thank you so much for the super chat contribution. Watching from his treadmill, very nice, very good stuff there. Somebody let me know the other day that they watch on like a 60-inch screen, and I'm like, really? I don't know if that's wise, but whatever. We appreciate it. So anyway, Yakov and others, some quick hitters here. They're very concerned about your regimen in regards to what you'll be available to. So we've received a question about when are you guys going to be able to watch, talk to the wide receivers? When are you going to be able to see a practice? So just some of those news and notes there.
I don't know
at this point. Okay, yeah, that's what I figured.
Dave said he'll likely have us there for an Ohio Stadium practice this spring, if possible. And of course, the Big Ten changed some rules today and allows some attendance for just depending on how the local rules. So things have been moving in the direction of we'll see something. Now it's just a matter of Dave following through on that. And in terms of talking to the receivers, we don't know. We will. It's just the only thing we know this week, and that was running backs yesterday and linebackers tomorrow.
All right, David Greenshield with a good question in regards to the depth chart and the roster. I shouldn't say depth chart. Was the depth chart announced as well as the roster? Is that released? Okay, just the roster. Okay. All right, that kills my question. I was going to try.
We haven't seen a depth chart since 2019.
Yeah, more or less.
All right. Ohio State football talk here every Wednesday, folks, 2:00 Eastern time with Steve Helwagen from Bucknuts, Kevin Noon, Buckeye Grove, and, of course, Tony Gerdeman from Buckeye Scoop. So I would encourage all of you to head on over to those respective sites, check out their work. It is definitely first rate, and that's the reason I've got them on right here. So I'm going to have to look up this Bruce Feldman column on the Athletics with the coaches. I'll have to pull that one up. I know what one of the questions brought this to mind. I think, maybe the poster child for this in recent years has been Justin Hilliard. Who do you guys see as a potential or a number of players that maybe have not reached their potential, have been on campus for a while, maybe headed toward a senior season, and could possibly salvage a career with a late run here, but have generally been a disappointment? Anybody come to mind?
I mean, I guess I'll jump in. You're pretty much describing the entire linebacker unit with that one. And not that they've been disappointments, they've just been behind guys who have started for 3 years. So you're looking at seniors and Dallas Gant, Taraja Mitchell. I mean, Taraja Mitchell came in as a 5-star by some accounts and has been behind Malik Harrison and Pete Werner and just hasn't had an opportunity and has played here and there. So maybe that's a guy. To compare somebody to Justin Hilliard, nobody has gone through what he has gone through, I think. So that one was a difficult one. Maybe Marcus Crowley would fit into that one, just missing an entire year. And but yeah, the linebackers are as a whole, somebody's going to step up and essentially come out of nowhere. And I think Craig Young is a possibility there, depending on how much they have him playing. I think he's an athletic guy who can do some things and make some plays. So that's one. I mean, another one is going to be the opposite corner this spring. Somebody's going to come out of there. And maybe a redshirt freshman rather than like a fourth-year junior in Tyreek Johnson. But I think the linebackers are probably the area to watch for somebody to come out of nowhere.
I look at it. You've got 3 wide receivers on the roster, Jalen Harris, Elijah Gardner, and Cameron Babb. I think Babb would be a junior. The other 2 would be seniors. And none of them have really ever made a play yet in their time at Ohio State. A lot of it's due to injuries. Gardner was a down-the-line recruit. And maybe a late take, like a January take or something, or a December take before that signing day. I don't remember exactly, but they're buried so far down the line. When you talk about Olave, Wilson, Williams, Scott, Smith, Najigba, Fleming, and then even Ballard, Harrison, and Igbuka. I mean, and then I come back to those 3 guys, and some people when the roster was released, like, why are they even still bothering? Because Babb, to a degree, I mean, he's a little bit younger than the other 2, and I'm not trying to pile on them. I'm just giving them as an example of this is it. I mean, if you don't, make a play this year, you never will. So Babb did get in there late in the season when he was finally healthy and for a few plays here and there, but not all that much. Didn't catch many passes. And so, there's 3 examples right there. On defense, I look at a guy like Jerron Cage, a defensive tackle. They need some help at defensive tackle. And he was kind of third, out of, third at one position. Let's say he was 5th or 6th out of the whole group of defensive tackles last year. And then he moved up a little bit as, 1 or 2 of them couldn't play because of COVID or whatever. And he's made a play or 2 here or there, but never on anything on any kind of a consistent basis. So I want to see how he responds, obviously, when we get into this situation this spring and this fall. If Jerron Cage is going to be in that group, those linebackers you mentioned, Mitchell, Gant, and Pope, it's time. Are you going to get passed up? And, that's probably the ones that really stand out for me, guys who are in their 4th or 5th year on the roster, and it's time for them to pull it together.
I'll jump in on the linebackers really quick. And is it a matter that they weren't ready to play, or they just couldn't surpass the likes of Baron Browning and Pete Werner and Tuck Borland? I think we're gonna figure that out pretty quick here. I'll talk defensive line and guys that are playing but just haven't necessarily flashed. And I guess somebody who maybe was a little bit of a lower recruit compared to what Ohio State fans are used to, but maybe somebody like a Javonte Jean-Baptiste, could we see a larger role out of him? But, I'll address the 5-star elephant in the room. This is the year for Zach Harrison to step up. And it's not that Zach Harrison hasn't made plays. It's just that Zach Harrison has not been the Zach Harrison that everybody seemed to think that was going to come out and be the next Bosa Young type player. And now you've got the next guy in the chute with Jack Sawyer. So it's going to really be a year for somebody like Zach Harrison to come up and have a big year. And I understand that I'm really getting away from the genesis of Mark's question of somebody who like Justin Hilliard, who really had not done much, whereas Zach Harrison has done a lot of things, but he certainly fits the DNA of somebody that is poised for that type of breakout year. And, if he has the kind of year that that I think people are hoping he could, just based on him really, you know, maybe having that light bulb moment or whatnot. It may make these previous couple of years look like nothing compared to what he could be in position to do.
Well, and staying with the defensive ends, Tyreek Smith is a senior. Tyler Friday is a senior. Tyreek Friday has 4 sacks to his credit in his career. And so these are guys that need to do more and have dropped some weight from last year, I think, in an effort to get to the quarterback. They're trying to find milliseconds of improvement on getting to the quarterback, whether it's dropping some weight to become faster, whether it's technique. And so those guys I would expect something from. Getting back to Cameron Babb, he is very similar to Justin Hilliard. I had forgotten about him, he's been injured his entire career, got to play last year, still looking for his first catch as a Buckeye. This is his 4th year. He's a top 100 player out of the 2018 class. Wyatt Davis has more correct catches as a Buckeye than Cameron Babb. So this is a guy who is and yet he's a leader in the room because they've seen the work that he's put in. I mean, he's relentless. And I think, 3 ACL tears in his time as a wide receiver, 2 at Ohio State, maybe 1 his senior year in high school, something like that. And so each year he loses a year on the field, and last year was his first time out there, didn't get a catch. But the fact that he's back and working again, that's a guy to watch. There's just so many receivers that it's going to be hard for anybody other than Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson to have, more than 15 or 20 catches, I think.
Just to remind everyone, the Super Chat's available. Our channel thrives based on your individual contributions, and when they are made to this specific show, they help this specific show keep going. And also, you get a free mask, Buckeye mask, if you would so choose. We've got about 35 teams available. Just go to voiceofcollegefootball.com. Voiceofcollegefootball.com, launched about a month ago. And you go to register for free up at the top of the menu bar there. And what you do there is you register for free. And we send you the coupon code. You get the free mask. Again, you've got Ohio State and about 35 other teams, and you get 20% off your first purchase. And we throw you in an entry for a $25 gift card. Guys, when we look at these quarterbacks, and this comes to mind because several comments were made in the live chat concerning attributes of the various quarterbacks. The Kyle McCord has maybe the best arm, an NFL kind of arm eventually. Of course, C.J. Stroud showed us some wheels against Michigan State. Is there a quarterback, obviously the guy that shows the leadership, because Ryan Day has outlined that being paramount, and then the skills and the ability to run the offense and all those things. But is there, based on what you guys have seen and know of the scouting reports on these three, a quarterback who may fit what Ryan Day wants and what this offense dictates, or better than the others?
I think until we see any of them attempt to pass, I mean, the information is very limited. We were going off of huddle tapes. We didn't see Jack Miller or C.J. Stroud attempt a collegiate pass last year. They were both in there as either runners or handing the ball off or whatnot. So, you can sit there and you can look at the body of work of each of them. And, this is what CJ does. This is what Jack does. This is what Kyle does or whatever. But you never really know how that's going to translate at this point. I mean, if not, I mean, it would just be a case of the people who are recruiting the highest 4 or 5 rated quarterbacks each year would just, wash, rinse, repeat and be able to just keep it going. You don't know at this point. I mean, I think that a lot of people are pushing their chips in on CJ Stroud just based on him having the 1 year in the program, maybe based off of what they saw him do at Elite 11. I mean, he does have some good wheels. He can make a lot of the throws or whatnot, but we don't know what he looks like against a rush. I mean, what little we've seen out of him has been extremely stunted in terms of what the play calling has been. So, I don't know. Maybe one of the other guys has some more insight on there than I do, but I kind of want to see it against live competition and not against theoretical stuff at this point.
Yeah, it would just be conjecture at this point. There's no way of knowing who the coaches are pinpointing as their guy behind closed doors. It sounds like they're all getting equal number of reps with the 1s and the 2s. so that they're each getting an equal opportunity to show what they can do. And they will fit an offense around whoever they feel is the best quarterback, I think, at the end of the day. And it could be a case where two guys end up playing a little bit, or, you just never know how this is all going to shake out. I mean, it does start out pretty quickly with the game at Minnesota and back home with Oregon. So there's not a lot of time for experimentation. It's kind of on-the-job training it's going to be for these guys. And you figure there'll be a full crowd of people at PCF Bank Stadium as well up there, hopefully, when the season kicks off in early September. So, I am of a mind that, look, it's great to worry and wonder about who it's going to be, but it's the process. We just need to let it play out and just assume that whoever wins the job is going to be a very good player for Ohio State. That's all we could do at this point.
I think it's not meaningless that C.J. Stroud was the backup quarterback last year. Ryan Day said it would fluctuate between him and Jack Miller, but after that first game when it was Jack Miller, it was C.J. Stroud every other time, including in the playoffs. So I don't think that's meaningless. However, he did so little as a backup quarterback that I don't think the lead that he had on anybody is out of reach for anyone. In terms of who fits what Ryan Day wants to do, let's keep in mind Ryan Day's quarterbacks at Ohio State have been J.T. Barrett, Dwayne Haskins, and Justin Fields, and all three of them had fantastic seasons under Ryan Day's offense. So he can maximize whoever you have, and maybe Justin Fields is the best answer in terms of what Ryan Day can do, because Justin Fields can do anything, and he's a better runner than J.T. Barrett in terms of speed and size and strength. He's maybe a better passer than Dwayne Haskins. So he's like the perfect guy for any offense, but who is the closest to him? I don't know. Is C.J. Stroud. Anytime you get a quarterback that can bust a 52-yarder or whatever it was, I mean, that's a guy who can run. But Jack Miller had a 22, 23-yard run in his debut as well, and Kyle McCord can run enough. So if it comes down to all of these guys can run better than Dwayne Haskins, and I feel like that's the minimum that a quarterback needs to do to be able to run, and just to at least show that you are willing to keep the ball on those read options to slow down the defensive ends and the defensive line. I think that's key, and all of those guys can do that. So just with that alone, then that helps the running game, and that makes the quarterbacks better. And I think any of the three would fit whatever Ryan Day wants to do.
Wasn't it Stephen A. Smith that was out there with the 1 year touting Dwayne Haskins' running abilities, or somebody who had obviously who watched the one game up in Ann Arbor or whatever, and the one run he had where he didn't quite make it to the end zone, and he got summarily just dragged through Twitter for just a real blind statement.
Something about yeah, he can run, but can he throw? Or all he does is run. Some really ignorant,
dumb.
Mm-hmm. That same individual was once breaking down a Chargers-Chiefs game in December, and about something like 4 of the 6 players he named were not on those teams or were injured from earlier in the season and were not playing. Had not played for weeks.
Just wait till Dan Fouts gets back. They can't win with this Ryan Leaf guy.
That's it right there. That is it. Well, Michigan has not been winning with this Jim Harbaugh guy, but Bruce Feldman of the Athletics still has him ranked in the top 25 coaches in college football. So we'll serve this one up, boys. Sorry, we don't have a graphic for you, so you got to hang on for the Big Ten coaches ranking. So Saban, Sweeney, 1 and 2. Okay, no big surprise. Don't need to really dive into that. But from the Big Ten perspective, James Franklin, the best rated coach by Bruce Feldman in the Big Ten, number 5 in college football. Ryan Day at 8, Pat Fitzgerald at 11, Kirk Ferentz at 13, Paul Chryst 21, Harbaugh at 22, Tom Allen at 25. So if you could keep all those in your brain, Steve, what's your reaction to specifically Day at 8, following up James Franklin, who's had a nice run at Penn State, but it hasn't been without its issues?
Yeah, I think he did that as a talking point, I think, to get people talking about his rankings. I mean, and there is some bias that somebody, you look at Franklin, he's probably got 10 years as a head coach now between his Vanderbilt and his Penn State, thereabouts. I don't know the exact number, 8, 9, 10, whatever it is, but he at least has that edge and experience. And I guess that's what you're looking at when you put him ahead of a guy who's accomplished so much in just 2 years as a head coach. I think I don't really have an overall arching problem with this. I think that if you want to be regarded as one of the best in your profession, you need to do it over the test of time. And I think 2 years is not a huge sample size, although the success has been almost unbridled for him. Done everything but win the national championship so far. So, I can see he's got the guys who've won the most championships who are still coaching out there on top. I don't know who he has at 3 and 4, maybe Kelly or I don't know. I doubt Cookie Monster Orgeron is in the top 5, even though he's won a championship. So I don't have a big problem with it. I think you could make an argument either way for Franklin or Day. Day's won more Big Ten championships in 2 years than Franklin's won in 4 or 5, however long he's been there. And he's also 2-0 against Franklin. But, whatever. I think as each year goes on and he continues to succeed like this, he'll move up on lists like this and be at the top. As for the rest of the Big Ten brethren in there, that sounded about how I'd have it. I think we joke a lot about Ferentz, but, again, longevity. Christ, he keeps winning the division almost every year, although he didn't win it this past year. He won the division a few times prior to that. I'm interested. I could see it, and I think Harbaugh behind all those guys is where he should be because he hasn't won to the level of any of those guys yet. And Allen, I think that's a great reward for the one outstanding season that he's had. You could see it was kind of starting to build at Indiana, pushing. And last year they broke through, and had they not had the injury and the problem that they had at the end of the season with the quarterback, maybe they finish it off and have a better finish. They certainly deserved a better bowl game than what they got, although once the quarterback was out and the COVID question as well, I think the committee was probably right to not put them in the New Year's Six with the fear that they may not be able to show up for the game. But at any rate, I'm generally okay with it. I know Ohio State fans are probably up in arms about it, but, as time goes on, you'll earn your spot. You'll move up the list, and I don't think there'll be any question about it.
Kevin, I think
it's a garbage clickbait list. It is stupid. It is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. James Franklin is 38-23 in Big Ten play in his however many years at Penn State. Not an elite program by his own admission. They've folded in more games than anybody that I've seen in a long time. And, the thing is we're going to sit there and punish Ryan Day for short service, but we're going to give Tom Allen, we're going to boost him up in Indiana. Indiana, for Christ's sake. We're going to give them, put them in the 20s or whatever off of what he's done in a year or whatever. Get out of here with this crap. This is a dumb list. James Franklin, honestly, about a third of that fan base is ready to run him because they just know it's stupid. It is just I can't even find the words that to keep this from being dinged off of monetization because I'm going to start swearing. That is the dumbest list I've ever heard. Bruce Feldman should be ashamed of himself. James Franklin is maybe 5th in the Big Ten, not East. Horrible list. Horrible.
I completely agree about Franklin and where he ranks in the Big Ten because he's I don't know how he ends up 5th on a national list unless you only know 5 coaches. So, he loses more games than he wins as a head coach in his decision making. So that automatically is a no-go for me. Is Day number 8? Tell me who the other 7 are, or the other 5 or 4 that are ahead
Lincoln
of him.
Riley's got to be up there from Oklahoma. He's won the Big 12 every year. He's been a coach.
Sure, Jimbo.
Ooh.
Jimbo.
He's the tallest little person.
Jimbo Fisher. I mean, like if
Jimbo
just
Fisher?
getting back to Franklin and Day, when Georgia fires their coach or whatever, and they could have either Day or Franklin. Is any major program going to choose James Franklin over Ryan Day at this point, or in 2 years? Maybe. Well, we'll see what happens in 2 years after, because I know there's this whole Larry Coker thing that maybe Ryan Day is Larry Coker. I don't think he is. I think he's pretty good doing what he's doing. And when you hear the players talk about him and other coaches talk about him and see what his recruiting, and gosh, he keeps making the playoffs out of, I guess, how Urban Meyer was always his fault for what Florida did for the 6 years after he was there. I guess it's Urban Meyer's fault that Ohio State keeps winning in the Big Ten. So give Urban Meyer blame, give him credit. Just whatever you do, you have to wait until he leaves to do these things. And so, where does Urban Meyer rank on that list? I'd have him number 4.
Well, I got to say, the one difficulty in doing this, and I'm in the process of doing it as well, and I'm going to release those each day of next week for each conference, is that you got to measure the facilities, you got to measure the resources, I should say, in throwing together all the components that equal the resources and the ability to win at that school versus what the coach is actually doing with that capability. So like a Pat Fitzgerald, and measuring him versus a Ryan Day is extremely difficult. But I have James Franklin at 3rd in the Big Ten myself.
If you have a mass transfer exodus, you need to do a checkup of your program. They've had a mass transfer exodus at Penn State. That is not the mark of the 5th coach in the nation. I'm seriously, we're all dumber for having read that list.
I haven't read it.
I better shut it down quickly then, because I don't need that.
And so, have you moved Fitzgerald behind Ryan Day at this point? I don't want to. You don't have to go into your list. I know you'll release it, but I would just like to say Scott Frost is no longer in the top 2 of my list. So let's go ahead and get that out there.
Yeah, I wrestled with the Pat Fitzgerald Ryan Day for exactly what I just stated. They're just dealing with different situations. They are dealing with much different situations in regard to the talent that can be drawn to those campuses.
Do you think if you put Day at Northwestern, he would do any different than Fitzgerald? And do you think if you put Fitzgerald at Ohio State, I think you put Fitzgerald at Ohio State, you're going to see some 9-3s. Just because I don't know that he's elite in terms of everything and living up to the brand. He lives up to the Northwestern brand, but I think there's more required at Ohio State.
I think it's hard for a non-Northwestern person to be successful at Northwestern, though, to put up with some of the the facilities is not an issue now that they have that beautiful lakefront facility and everything else, but we know that it's a lot more difficult in some aspects to get some kids in and deal with some of the challenges that you have as a private school and whatnot. So, I don't know if you could plug, if you plug Dabo or Saban or Day or somebody and drop them in at Northwestern, if they're going to be able to sit there and have the same translation. And let's not forget, it's not that Pat Fitzgerald is winning the West yearly. They're on a little bit of a heater right now, on for a year, off for a year, on for a year. But there are a lot of middling years there too. But with that being said, I think when we look at just longevity and just the overall body of work, and we put in maybe some of the variables based on whatever around the university, that Fitzgerald certainly on my list, if I were to draft one, would be very much in that upper cut.
Let's remember, we already know Nick Saban cannot win in the Big Ten, so that's a moot point.
That's been proven. I think Northwestern, when they've had a quarterback, has been pretty good. We've seen that kind of borne out in the years that they didn't have a quarterback. They weren't very good. So they can't overcome that. So some schools can, they can't. Wisconsin can overcome it because they can line up and run for 4,000 yards, and they've got a great defense, but Northwestern can't. So, yeah, I kind of like the list. I guess the more you guys talk, the more I'm forgetting about some of Franklin's shortcomings, and maybe that's what I was thinking. I was just thinking of a guy who at least had won a Big Ten, and has been right around that 10-win plateau most of his years there. But in some ways, you have to take what happened in 2020 and just kind of curl it up in a ball and throw it away because, I don't know what it proved, or, we don't know who was available, and they had guys opt out. I mean, their best player didn't play last season. So, I don't know. It's kind of hard to base anything off of what happened this past year. Now, the previous 6 years, yeah, I think it's pretty clear.
Well, to Harbaugh's defense, then we need to do the same thing with him, is ball up the 2 and 4 for 2020 and throw it away. So I'm kind of in a wait and see mode as to, okay, is this starting a trend at Michigan? Is this starting a trend at Penn State? I feel as though it's an aberration at Penn State. I believe, we'll see. I'm much more inclined to believe that this is a downward trajectory for the Maize and Blue.
I think we're going to see Michigan get right back where they were, which is 8-4, 9-3 every year. And I think, that's going to be a great accomplishment for them coming off of 2-4 to get back to 8-4, 9-3. I think that's probably about the sweet spot for them. Picked 11th, 10th, 11th in the preseason, end up barely in the top 25 at the end. Yeah, that's kind of how they do it.
They felt so comfortable with their quarterback position that they went out and picked up a transfer quarterback, and I think that they could roll out of bed and be a 7-5 team or something like that, and then if a couple things go okay, they could maybe pick up another win or two there and get to that 9-3 that Steve says. But it's the only light that they're seeing at the end of the tunnel is a train. That's it. I mean, they're not getting ready to emerge. They're going to emerge out of the side they came into, train first, Bugs Bunny style. I mean, they're not. No. That's all I'm just going to say is no.
I think they're very dangerously balanced to where, yeah, maybe 9-3, but also if things go poorly early, they just cave in and quit. And this is a schedule where I think the first 6 games are pretty, losable for a handful of them. So one of the good things, Mark, regarding the masks and the free mask and the registration, for Michigan fans, you can move the mask over your eyes and it becomes a blindfold.
For the trained.
That needs to be my my pitch.
Light up the smoke.
I'll go with that.
Yes, there you go.
There it is. Yes,
everybody.
We do have Michigan masks as well that are multi-purpose masks, as outlined by Tony. Very nice. I like that. Yeah, it's always a fascinating. Anytime you deal with lists and ranking players or coaches, especially coaches, because you just have that. It's one thing to say, this running back ran for 1,200 yards and 12 touchdowns, and this running back ran for 1,000 yards and 14 touchdowns. Kind of thing, versus these coaches who are dealing with just different situations with different levels of support. And Kirk Ferentz, he took over for a legend in Hayden Fry, but the program was in awful condition at the time. He turns it around from 1-10. I'm looking at his track record a couple of days ago, and I see he goes number 8 in the country, years like 3, 4, and 5 right out of the gate. He turns that thing around in a heartbeat to a top 10 status 3 consecutive years. Then for the next 10 years, outside of like one jump where they went to the year that they almost knocked off Ohio State, Terrell Pryor had to make that miracle play in Iowa City on like 4th and 1,000,000, that they almost outright won the Big Ten, still shared the Big Ten, and went to the Orange Bowl and won it that year. But other than that, they really slumped for 10 years. And then they kind of did the same thing after 09 and 010 when they had good seasons where they dipped, but then they jumped back up to a Rose Bowl. And they typically strike me as they're going to go 8-4, Iowa.
Yeah,
so,
well, and they one game away in 2015 of possibly being in the playoffs or being left out as an undefeated team if they win that Big Ten championship game against Michigan State. And so, yeah, that's why I like the way the Big Ten is set up, because any Big Ten West team can do what Iowa did, can do what Wisconsin has done, being one game away from like going into that Big Ten championship game undefeated and being a win away from the playoffs. And I think that's why it's just an interesting dichotomy between the Big Ten East of Ohio State and then all of these other scrappers on the Big Ten West who all they have to do is beat each other and then beat Ohio State or maybe a Penn State and you make the playoffs. And I don't know who it's easier for. Which side is it easier for? Is it easier for Penn State or is it easier for Iowa?
It's always something to see the team coming out of the West being undefeated and a 13-point dog in the Big Ten championship game.
And them going ahead by 2 touchdowns at halftime and then getting -5 yards in the second half.
A tradition unlike any other.
Yes.
One of these years. Since they split into those divisions, let's see, the last Big Ten championship game under the old rules or alignment was Ohio State, Michigan State, right? In 13. Then they changed it. Yeah, so it's been the East every year since then. Ohio State, Penn State the 1 year. Michigan State the 1 year. Okay, so it's been an Eastern Division sweep. Although if you look at the head-to-head, it's not that the bottom feeders in the East have dragged down the head-to-head record between the East and West. It's not that much disparity there, but
well, you have Rutgers and Maryland in the East.
Exactly.
And Ohio State losing to Purdue and Iowa.
That's it right there. All right, good stuff, boys. Anything that we did not hit on this week?
No, we hope to get an idea tomorrow about the linebacker rotation and who's lining up at which position, and their cross training, I'm sure, between, outside spots and whatever, middle, and hopefully we'll get some figure on that. And then next Tuesday, we'll probably get, another position group. So we'll have those 2 position groups we ought to be able to really delve into next week on Wednesday, if we're around on Wednesday next week.
Okay. Well, we're going to get your buddy Pat Murphy on here tomorrow to talk about the linebackers after we hear from
the Murph Star. There we go.
Right. All right.
About soccer.
Yeah, ask him about soccer. And
yes,
orange slices.
that's a bad word on this channel. All right, Tony Gerdeman, Buckeye Scoop. I'm with you. I am with you. Kevin Noon, Buckeye Grove. Check him out there. And, of course, Steve Helwagen from Bucknuts on 247 Sports. Gentlemen, it's always a pleasure. Again, I tell you guys this, meaning the audience every week. Hope you appreciate this. These guys are available for us every week, and they donate the hour plus all the contacts that we have to make to get things arranged. So they're giving of their time, and hopefully you appreciate it. All right, boys. Again, have a great week. I guess no responsibilities coming in regards to NCAA tournament coverage.
No,
not so much.
Just watching it at this point.
All right. Have a great week. We'll see you back here next week, hopefully.
Sounds good.
All right.